pronouncing his presence. Pellerino was the tongue of the flame, licking the eyes of those who have tried to remain blind, shining a light on a spirit that would not be denied. No, the chains did not break the spirit, did not enslave the music of my soul, did not shackle the will of my freedom, did not tarnish the glow of my gold. And all the Pellerinos in Africa, in Europe, in North and South America cannot destroy the majesty of my people, the love of my people, shining like the sun everywhere we go, everywhere we go. When the light is clear, oh, how beautiful I will be to know that I've been here and made it through my journey, yeah, and made it through my journey, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
With folks tonight, what we're going to be doing, obviously on every Thursday, we're going to be tuning in. I've got my wife Christine just popped in for a minute. We also have Isaac is here in the house with us. On the call right now, we have Dennis Febo, who's on state operations over at the Abolish Slavery National Network. We're hoping to hear from him tonight. We got a couple slides we're going to go over tonight. Hopefully we can get Max to bring us some more music later on. But we're really excited about the Abolish Slavery Vermont, this campaign that we're starting to kick off. We've got our partners, Vermont Interfaith Action. Maya, if you can reach directly out to Melissa and see, check in with her. I think she's supposed to be on, maybe, I don't know whether she got the memo, but I know she'd reached out. So if there's any way we can get her on. We have Max Parthis, who's on with us from the Abolish Slavery National Network. We'll give you some updates on some of the things that are happening across the United States and also what's happening here in Vermont. So for those who are joining us right now, welcome, welcome, welcome. We'll take some time and reach out to some of the other folks who are going to be joining us. And as I said, I'll be pulling up a slide deck. Wanted to go first over, before we get into our state updates, I wanted to go just to get a brief update and just a check-in, a general check-in on from Max. And Max will come back to you later, but if there's any high-level updates that you wanted to offer for what's going on at State Ops, Max Parthis, an abolitionist. I think you might be on mute.
Thank you. Hello, Mark, and hello, everyone that's gathered here today for this historic venture that we're all on of ending slavery for the first time in the grandfather of slavery exception clauses of Vermont. We have had some new information come in. Louisiana, for example, in the deep, dark South, the home of Angola prison, has filed their bill to end slavery in their state as well for the first time in Louisiana. Wow. And that is 298, wow. I believe, HB 298. And also, New Jersey has resubmitted their bill within the last couple of weeks. I will leave that for Dennis Febo, who is the person behind the New Jersey amendment, to explain that. It's a unique condition. If they succeed, and when they do succeed, they'll be the first state to incorporate anti-slavery language into their state constitution, where previously there was no protection for their citizens.
Yeah, hold on for 1 minute, Max. 1 minute, okay? Stand by.
Recording in progress.
I got you. Go ahead.
So he'll explain the history behind New Jersey's effort to end slavery. Recently, I was able to attend the anniversary of Bloody Sunday in Alabama, Selma, Alabama, and spoke along with the Vice President Kamala Harris, Ben Crump, Also, Marilyn Mosby, the district attorney out of Baltimore, and many others, dignitaries like Al Sharpton and stuff. And we were able to explain to them that Alabama is about to end slavery. They're one of the 4 states like Vermont who have their bill already passed and is going to the ballot where the citizens get to vote whether or not they want slavery in their state. So Alabama and Louisiana in the deep, dark South is getting it done. And I'd like to think that you inspire a lot of this because of your efforts. Thank you.
Hey, Max, thanks a lot for joining us. And for those who are joining, this is, we're here in Burlington, Vermont, of all places. We're in Burlington, Vermont, and we are here with the Vermont Racial Justice Alliance. And this is the kickoff. We're kicking this thing off over the last couple of weeks. We're catching up with our partners. We're finding out what's going on. Don't know whether we're going to get the opportunity to catch up with Vermont Interfaith Action tonight. I know that they had a few things going on, but I wanted to make sure that we were providing some updates for those who are joining. We are broadcasting. Welcome for those who are out in that little land that they call Facebook. So welcome to all of y'all who are joining us here. We're at the Richard Kemp Center. It's a trip too, because it's like 4,300 square feet in here. And what we decided to do probably about a month ago is to get back in community. But every single week we decided to try to get back in the community. At the 11th hour, we pulled the plug. So what we've been doing is we've been over the last few days is trying to make that final decision. And here we are. It feels real weird. And we're sitting in here. We've got folks from Channel 17 running around here doing good stuff. Charlie, my wife is sitting here, back here. Isaac, our community engagement and support director, is here. And other than that, there's probably 50 or 40 seats available in the room. There's nobody here right now. We didn't really expect. We just got a new couch today. I got a refrigerator back there now. So it's just an amazing time here. But just wanted to give some updates on what's happening with the Abolish Slavery. The Vermont Abolish Slavery, as far as the status, the campaign, and updates. So for those of you who are watching across the nation and those who are here across the state, what we did is we started in 2019. With a 4-year run on this constitutional amendment to ensure that here in Vermont that we would remove the 3 exception clauses that predate any exception clause. In fact, any language in any constitution regarding slavery predates all of that. There was never a constitution that even spoke of slavery, that even had any language on slavery. So Vermont, no, it wasn't the first state to abolish slavery. We were the first state to constitutionalize slavery, and with 3 exception clauses. So this is a 245-year trek that we've been on, and it's only been in these last 4 years where what we've done is we've identified it as an issue. We're elevating it to folks' attention, and what we believe is by stating soundly in the Constitution that slavery and indentured servitude are prohibited in all forms, then we can make it clear here in the state of Vermont that we are not a state that has a value system that holds up and supports slavery. And we can argue all day about whether it exists or where it is and all that other stuff. But truthfully, that's not the point. The point is that the Constitution is the foundation of all of our statutes, of every single one of our values and principles, and it's a living document. And we go to the Constitution to guide us in every single thing we do, making laws, determining whether laws are constitutional, taking oaths to office, and the list goes on. So yes, of course, we want to say in our Constitution that slavery is unconstitutional. Moreover, what we want to do is we want to counter the language that is about 157 years old that's in the United States Constitution, namely the 13th Amendment, which says that slavery is prohibited, but it goes on to clearly state, and only about, Max, help me out, 22% of the population of the United States if I'm not mistaken. Is that right,
Yes.
bro? Yeah, you with me.
The poll that was done by our federal operatives found out that 22% of the U.S. population is aware that there's a 13th Amendment exception clause. So basically 88% or whatever the remainder is doesn't know. And I have to say that is an improvement, because when I started this battle a couple decades ago, I'd say maybe 2 or 3% knew. So if we got up to 22%, we're doing pretty good. We're hoping by the end of November that we'll have that up to over 50% with the campaigns that we're putting on to make sure that these ballot initiatives are passed.
Where do we get those numbers again on the 20? I don't want to get stuck, but where do we get those numbers on the 22%, Max?
Worth Rises, which is managing the federal campaign for the Abolish Slavery National Network, did a professional poll, and that was the results. It was a few other details involved, like some people, a percentage thought that there was an exception, but they thought it would only apply if the president did it in times of war. But basically, the vast majority of Americans are not even aware that there's an exception to slavery. But they are aware we have the largest prison population in the U.S. in the history of humanity on planet Earth. And I'm hoping that when they become aware of the other half of this story, that the two pieces click together very clearly. Right.
Yeah. I appreciate that. So here we go. 157 years since the 13th Amendment was penned. And what we know is that from that time period, which was roughly somewhere around about, I want to say 89 years or something like that, between the time that our Constitution was written, the state of Vermont, our Constitution written in Windsor in 1777, to the time that the Constitutional Amendment was written, between that time that the 13th Amendment, rather, was written, what we know is that the states of Ohio and I believe Oregon, maybe the Northeast Territory, and then ultimately right about the same time when we were getting to a point of Reconstruction, I think Alabama might have chipped in. Was there one more there, Max? Another state? But the point is that all of them modeled the language in the state constitution of Vermont. What do I mean by modeled? There were no constitutions that had exception clauses for slavery. Indeed, there were no constitution that had there were no state constitutions that had any language for slavery. Moreover, so it was us here in the state of Vermont, the brave little state in the land of the home of the free and the land of the brave, that we actually led the charge in this work. So that's why this is really historic. You know, that's why I'm excited. I'm excited about the training opportunities that we're going to have with our partners. Max, I'm excited about, you know, with I think Vermont Interfaith Action, they have maybe 70 congregations, and there's like maybe 16,000 folks that we're interfacing with there. We're going to continue to get the word out, teach some folks, educate some folks, and then finally move to a point where for the first time in 245 years, that's a deal. So on the 16th of February, just last month, we completed the process. What happened is that the Constitution did indeed make it through the Senate. It made it through the House in 2019 and 2020, respectively. And then we came back in 21 and 22, and yes, back through the Senate, this Proposal 2 made it, and then it made it back through the House of Representatives just in February of this year in 2022. And on the 16th of February, finally made it to the office of the Secretary of State. And that is where it will be prepared to go on the ballot for the November election. So you will see, for those of you who are watching, you will see this this constitutional amendment, PR2, will be on our ballot. So it's a long journey, and it's a historical journey. You're going to be seeing some stuff that's coming out from us as we are giving folks an opportunity to come out and join us in these conversations, come out and learn more about what it is we're doing around organizing to move towards November. figuring out ways where you might be able to get involved in phone banking. You could get involved in some of the canvassing that we're going to be doing. We're going to be knocking on a whole lot of doors. We're going to be training up organizers. We're going to be moving people into action. We're going to be registering folks to vote. And we're going to be getting the word out across the state, because this is really a big deal. So, Max, thank you. Phoebo, I see you on, and I was wondering, can you pop in? I don't know whether you had any updates for Jersey, any other state operations updates, or just in general in what's happening in Jersey. Are you there, Phoebo?
I'm here, family. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, so my name is Dennis Phoebo. I am the I spearhead the Amend the 13th campaign over here in New Jersey. We've been at it for the past 3 years. We've had a lot of successes, but at the end, we didn't make it in time to pass for the this legislative calendar. But we were able to resubmit, so we now have a new bill and no excitement around it, because we'll have the ability, I think, a way stronger ability and more experience now as well on how to go about this. So I'm excited, and I'm excited because the work that you're doing also, if you didn't know, influences over here. If I'm bringing up over here, hey, Vermont's doing it, and it just raises eyebrows, like, really? Like, other people are doing it. And that was the whole goal of ASN. And for those of us that were doing this work, that we'd all come together and support each other. And again, I like what you said, Mark, like, you could literally hold this whole workshop and be like, or this event, and say, slavery, it shouldn't exist. And like, end the show, right? Like, like no necessity to continue and trying to get into the intricacies about changing language that we know over time have been used to disenfranchise, to remove from economy, to remove from the vote, right? And just historic, like, just standing on it, period. For here, New Jersey was the last state in the union to amend sign the 13th Amendment, right, or ratify it. And in that process, they were supposed to write it into the state constitution, as 25 other states, same thing. They didn't write it into the constitution. So technically, according to the process, those states never really fully ratified. And that's what we're pushing here in Jersey, like, add the language to the constitution, but as you're adding it, remove the exception clause to just permanently abolish slavery as it was intended to be. So here we stand in 2022, side by side. Jersey got y'all back, Vermont, and we really wish you a lot of success over there.
Hey, Phoebo, thanks for joining. I really appreciate it. Max, you can cue something up. We're getting ready to move into a couple of slides, and we're going to talk a little bit more about some history. I think it's so important. It's incredibly important for folks to know and understand, not just, what we're doing, but why we're doing it. So to get a good understanding on what this actually all means, and kind of, frame this thing historically as far as what we have done as a nation, what we have done as a state, to really get our heads around this thing. So we definitely want to share a couple slides with you, provide you some path forward on some other things, and tell you how this relates to some of the other work that we're doing. Again, we're going to come back in a minute. Max, cue me up, bring me some music, and we'll be back on the other side of this, and we'll give you some more updates with some a few slides from our decks. Thank you.
Well, you better listen, my sisters and brothers, because if you do, you can hear there are voices still calling across the years, and they're all crying across the ocean, and they're crying across the land, and they will till we all come to understand. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. One of us are chained. None of us are free. And there are people still in darkness, and they just can't see the light. If you don't say it's wrong, then that says it's right. We got to try to feel for each other. Let our brothers know that we care. Got to get the message, send it out loud and clear. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. One of us are chained. None of us are free. Now I swear your salvation isn't too hard to find. None of us can find it on our own. We got to join together in spirit, heart, and mind, so that every soul who's suffering will know that we're not alone. Oh, none of us are free. None of us are free, y'all. None of us are free, and one of us are chained. None of us are free. If you just look around you, you're gonna see what I say. 'Cause the world is getting smaller each passing day. Now it's time to start making changes, and it's time for us all to realize that the truth is shining bright right before our eyes. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. One of us is chained. None of us are free. Oh, none of us are free. Oh, my. None of us are free. No, none of us are free. One of us is chained. One of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. The one of us is chained. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. No. None of us are free. One of us is chained. Oh Lord. None of us are free. Oh Lord. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. One of us is chained. None of us are free.
Ain't nobody free until everybody free. Thank you for that. Max Parth is coming at us out of Sumter, South Carolina. The folks over on the state ops, I see our good friend Melissa Batag has just joined us. She can't stay but for a minute, so we're gonna get to her pretty doggone quick because she's moving around trying to make some other things happen with another call. Melissa, are you there?
I am, Mark.
Hey.
Thanks for having me. Hey there.
Hey, I want to just introduce to some and remind others of Mrs. Melissa Batag. She's right here with us in the state of Vermont with Vermont Interfaith Action, our partner in the Abolish Slavery campaign here in Vermont. Our partner, very, very proud, 16,000 parishioners, 70 congregations. Vermont Interfaith Action, also our fiscal sponsor here in the state of Vermont. Very happy to have you, Melissa. And I wanted to just, if you want to throw some slides, you're welcome to do that too. We can share that over. If you just want to do just a little brief update, the mic is yours. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I think I'm going to share. You disabled the screen sharing though. So if you want to, I got you. Let me do that. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I My apologies for not being on the camera. I wasn't really expecting this, and I'm having to make dinner right now. But I do want to share with you all the work that.
Can you get after that slide share right now? Can you do it?
Let me try again. Share screen. There we go.
Okay.
All
right.
Yeah, so we have been working with Mark and other staff at Vermont Racial Justice Alliance. I guess since like November, maybe. Mark, I think is when we started talking about this. I've been talking about it a little bit longer than that. But yeah, so my background is I'm the deputy director of Vermont Interfaith Action, but I've also helped lead some other issue campaigns, particularly raising the minimum wage. And I have been the lead organizer for VIA's civic engagement the past probably 8 years or so, where we've done mostly just get out the vote work and offer candidate forums. But when Prop 2 came up, we just recognized that we really need to make sure that we're making a concentrated push to see this proposal across the finish line. So what we have done, this is the timeline for the campaign work that we're doing. Right now, you can see down at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen there that between February, we began these in February and going through April, we're doing a series of educational workshops, just letting folks know about the proposition, why it's there, why we need to be concerned about it. In May, the first week of May, we're going to offer a couple of trainings. It's going to be the same training two different times to allow folks that say, hey, we want to be a part of this. We want to really step up and help organize this campaign to come and get trained to do that. And then we will have a launch later in May with having our clergy across the state are going to do what we call an abolitionist Sabbath, where they choose a weekend within a month period where they will, part of their teaching in their faith community, will have the message of Proposition 2 and why we need to pass it as a central theme. And then during that abolitionist Sabbath, we will have folks sign pledge cards to be abolitionist voters. And we'll also be dropping some op-eds during that time period. Then we kind of go into our relational recruiting, which is just, letting folks know through one-to-one conversations, kitchen table conversations, doing some phone banking and social media posting and through public service announcements, what the work is, why we're saying vote yes on Prop 2, and kind of slowly building to the primaries so that after the primaries happen, we can start doing a more concentrated push with doing some lit drops where we pass out literature at maybe some of the fairs that are happening at farmers markets, other outdoor events, do some door-to-door canvassing, and really make sure that the folks that we've been building relationships with have a plan to go and vote. The week of September 26th is when ballots will be mailed out to every registered voter, and we'll really buckle down on our get out the vote work. Again, making sure folks have plans, making sure folks are getting their absentee ballots, that they understand how to vote, where to drop things off, when to vote, where to vote, that sort of thing. And then we'll culminate this in an election night watch party. Where, yeah, I think, Mark, we'll have you all host that party.
Yeah, well, I think we should do it over here at the Kim Center or somewhere.
I agree. At least maybe that can be one hub, because we will have, the goal of this is to have 80,000 conversations with at least 18,000 voters across the state, because we want to make sure that we're not just hitting one pocket of the state or another, but that folks really understand, the way I look at it is that we really need to understand that if we don't pass this, none of our liberation is going to come unless everyone's liberation is there. And right, with having the language that we have in our state constitution, we're not going to get there. And so part of my goal and part of the reason why I think VIA is all about putting this campaign out there is that we want to make sure that our state understands this is the way that we bring change to our state, and that it starts here. So, Mark,
thank you so much.
There's the short, sweet little campaign pitch.
Come on, Max. Don't we have some applause queued up for her or anything, man? Come on. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us. I know you got to get back, and we're gonna be doing this on a regular basis. And I know that with all of the moving parts, with all of the stuff that y'all have going on, as well as us, sometimes it's hard for us to cross paths. But we would love to have you continue to come back and be a part of what's going on, all the way leading up to that night when we're celebrating night, where we're up half the night sitting up in here playing spades, right? So we'll see you next time.
I am going to come on up and play spades with y'all because I'm from South Florida originally, and I haven't been able to find anyone up here to play spades with me. So I'm going to come and hit y'all up sometime to play spades. I might be a bit rusty, but it'll be good.
It's all right as long as there's some trash talking going on. We're so glad to have you, Melissa, and we'll be catching up with you later on, and probably at the top of next week. All right, thank you for joining.
Sounds great. Thanks so much. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you. That's it, folks. You heard it. That was Melissa Baton, and that is straight out of the Vermont Interfaith Action Network. These folks up here in partnership with these guys that we're calling the Faith in Action Network across the United States. So they're all about it. They're doing a lot of work of criminal justice reform intersecting with some activism. But just to be clear, we are abolitionists here, okay? We are abolitionists. What we are doing is we are still we are working to abolish slavery. Today is Harriet Tubman Day. As Max cues us up, I'm going to cue us back up for a minute, Max, bring us back in with something else. But I did want to say that to designate March 10th, 1990, that was Harriet Tubman Day, was you can just start easing that music in here. It's a public law 101252, March 13th, 1990. This is a public law in the 101st Congress, a joint resolution, whereas Harriet Ross Tubman was born into slavery. Where my music at? Was born into slavery in Bucktown, Maryland. And that was around 1820. And what we have is she escaped slavery in 1849 and became a conductor of the Underground Railroad. Come on, Max. Whereas she undertook. And
you want me to play the music? Or?
Yeah, I want you to play some music while I'm talking.
Okay, all right.
Whereas she undertook and reported 19 trips as a conductor, endeavoring, despite great hardships and great danger, to lead hundreds of slaves to freedom. Whereas Harriet Tubman became an eloquent and effective speaker on behalf of the movement to abolish slavery, whereas she served in the Civil War as a soldier, spy, nurse, scout, and cook, and as a leader in working with newly freed slaves. And whereas after the war, she continued to fight for human dignity, human rights. That's right, human rights, folks. Opportunity and justice. And whereas Harriet Tubman, the general, whose courageous and dedicated pursuit of the promise of American ideals and common principles of humanity continues to serve and inspire all people who cherish freedom, died in her home in Auburn, New York on March 10th, 1913, and therefore be it resolved by the Senate and the House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled that March 10th, 1990 is this to be designated as Harriet Tubman Day. Happy Harriet Tubman Day to all of you. Harriet Tubman Day. This is to be observed by the people of the United States with appropriate ceremonies and activities. Let the party begin. Max, go ahead and bring that to us, and we'll be right back with some more updates in the slide deck. Thank you, Harriet. Thank you.
Underneath the hanging tree, he looks just like me. So tell me, am I really free? Could have been my mother crying for my brother, and everybody's praying for peace. But who's gonna protect us from the police? Keep these chains off me, 'cause I don't wanna be another seed underneath the hanging tree. Pray for me, Lord, don't let me be another seed underneath the hanging tree. On our bodies, the color of purple fruit, power of the blood, spent on designers that don't give a damn about you. Just sometimes, am I just living to die? Cause the way they do my kind, I just wanna cry. Shades off me, I don't wanna be another seed underneath the hanging tree. Pray for me, Lord, don't let me be another seed underneath the hanging tree.
Take these chains off me. Thank you, Max. We are broadcasting. We're live at the Richard Kemp Center in Burlington, Vermont, and we are joined by Mr. Max Parthis, the Abolish Slavery National Network. He is over in Sumter, South Carolina. I got with me Director of Outreach and Community Outreach Engagement, and we've got this brother over here. His name is representing. He is Isaac Owusu in the house, and we also have Charlie Giannoni here from the folks over at Channel 17. We are here live in the Richard Kemp Center. If you want to stop in, sure, stop in. We might have some water or something like that. But we're also talking about Abolish Slavery, what we're doing for those who are in Facebook land. We're talking about the campaign that is the PR2 is a constitutional amendment. Get your head around this for a minute. This is a constitutional amendment to amend the Constitution of Vermont to abolish slavery and indentured servitude. What it simply states is slavery and indentured servitude are prohibited. In all forms are prohibited. Just try to get your head around that just for a minute. Because, one of the things that we're doing here as we're having these conversations is we're trying to get folks to understand just exactly what this means and have some conversations around why it is necessary. So one of the things that we'll be doing today is just having some conversations about this. But before we do that, I want to just stop in for a minute, and I don't know what we have here. I think we're working with a presentation. Y'all gonna have to bear with me for a minute and just see if you can get your head around what we're showing you in terms of this layout. We'll just blow it up a little bit here just for you so you can see it. So one of the things that we're working with as we're doing this work is what's really foundational. What's really foundational to this work is just understanding the why, around why we would come to a point in the work as the Racial Justice Alliance that the Constitution, the language in the Constitution surrounding slavery is important. And we have to understand that foundationally here in the United States, foundationally, we know that the systemic racism that we experience here across the United States, it's rooted to, it's inextricably bound to the legacy of slavery as a nation, that we have as a nation. And we'll talk more about what the United Nations has to say about that. I think we have a slide for you we can share. We won't go over all of the slides, but it's really important to try to get our heads around why this work is important to us as the Racial Justice Alliance, and an organization who has gone out and done work across, areas of the healthcare system, areas of the criminal justice system, and so forth, economic development, areas, towards reparations here in the city, and just divesting and reinvesting across public safety and various other elements. So why are we, it may seem as though we're all over the boards, but we're really not, because systemic racism, it involves both the deep structures and the surface structures of racial oppression. It includes a complex array of anti-Black practices and the unjustly gained political economic power of whites, the continuing economic and other resource inequalities along racial lines, and the emotion-laden racist framing created by whites to maintain and rationalize their privilege and power. So, of course, the institution of slavery is incredibly important for us to reconcile with, for us to come to terms with, and understand where it came from. And especially when we are at a point as a nation where, in effect, it still actually exists in only 22% of all people in the nation even know that to be a fact. So it's very important also understanding that Vermont's role with slavery, for those of you who are joining, this is the Vermont Racial Justice Alliance. We're broadcasting live from the Richard Kemp Center. We're talking about our Abolish Slavery campaign. That's PR2, that's going to be on the ballot here in November. But for those who are watching here in the work that we're doing, it's also important to understand that Vermont played a foundational role in the creation of constitutionalized slavery, with exception. In fact, it would take Vermont's Constitution in 1777, the first constitution to ever have language of slavery. I said 1777. It wouldn't be until 1787 until we had a United States Constitution. And though there was no language specifically relating to slavery, there was a 3/5 clause in the United States Constitution. And yes, we would indeed go on to amend the Constitution with the 13th Amendment during Reconstruction in 1865, 70-some years later, and yes, indeed use yet another exception clause modeled after the Vermont Constitution. So yes, very, very relevant. And part of our campaign, our legislative agenda, if you will, that we refer to as Acknowledge, Create, and Transform. This is, the top of the list of some of the things that we committed to getting done, not just this year, not last year, not even just the year before that, but we started this work in 2019. So just making sure everyone it's very important that we're understanding what it is, the work that we're actually seeking to accomplish here. Now, for those who are watching, what we're going to do is we're going to take you for a quick ride, because now this is the educational component. Now, we've been here for a little bit. We're going to push through for another 20, 25 minutes maybe. But this is the educational component, and I wanted to stop and take some time to share with you more about what this Constitution actually says. But before I do that, I want to share a quick story with you. I was walking down the street one day, and this is just one example of many that I have. One involves a conversation with the Attorney General on the phone. One involves, being in the legislature. One involves having a conversation with our state treasurer, Beth. But anyway, at this point, I was walking next to Jim Condos, and I really love Jim, and I hope that he, reconsiders running for state secretary again. And I'm not sucking up or anything like that, but I just like the guy. So I was talking to him. We were walking down the street in Montpelier on State Street, and we were walking from that Thai restaurant. Everybody who's watching right now, you know exactly where I'm talking about. Willa Wan's, okay? And we were coming, and this was like 3 years ago, and I said, Jim, what do you think about amending the Constitution of the state of Vermont to abolish slavery? And he looked at me and he said, and I'm not trying to embarrass you, Jim, he said, we don't have that. And this is the same thing that I've gotten from person after person after person, legislator after legislator, elected official after elected official, all of whom take an oath to the Constitution as elected officials. So there was a whole lot of conversation about this, and when we took this thing into committee because we have a right to introduce it, and we even had a professor who's been at the Vermont Law School for and I'm not exaggerating, probably almost the last 50 years. Peter Teachout, I'm gonna call you out, Peter Teachout, who came up, and Teachout's a name, it's a Vermont name. And he came up and he pushed back against this, and ultimately he, went back and forth on this. He resisted it. Then he accepted it. Then he resisted it again. At the end of the day, bottom line is Peter's been a law professor at UV at the law school since '73, I think it is. We've had legislators, senator. We have actually had representatives in our House of Representatives vote against this. So that's the context. It seems like a no-brainer if you say that that nobody can be brought here from overseas to be holden by law to serve any person as a servant or a slave or apprentice. And then you go on to say, comma, after arriving to the age of 21 years, unless bound by a person's own consent, after arriving to such age, or bound by law for the payment of debts, damages, fines, costs, or the like. It is very clear in this language that there are 3 exception clauses in this Constitution that permit slavery. Under the age of 21, at your own consent, or debts, fines, damages, and the like, and so forth. Okay, and this is not unusual. There are many state constitutions who have these. This is the first. And the question is for what reason would we have this language in our Constitution? And instead of figuring that out, the proposal was to get rid of it. So that's what we were doing. And just to let you know, therefore, slavery and indentured servitude in any form are prohibited. This is the current this is what the language of the proposal looks like right now. It just basically says that all persons are born free and independent. It goes on to say, instead of this other nonsense that is currently in the previous version, it just goes on to say, therefore, slavery and indentured servitude in any form are prohibited. That's it. That is it. That's the constitutional amendment. So, and what it does is it does a couple things, and one of the things that it does is it eliminates the 3 exception clauses clearly. So what does that mean is there are no circumstances in the state. These are our values as Vermonters. As Vermonters, we don't want to own slaves. We don't want to be slave holders. What we know is that because the Constitution permits it, that there is a possibility, there is at least a legal standing, some kind of framework, some kind of grounding that has the ability to justify policy, that has the ability to justify statutes, rules, institutions, and so forth. It's the Constitution. So what we proposed was to do that. The second thing is what it would do is, and this is what the 22%. I think my foot got stuck to the floor. This is where the 22% they didn't get the full memo, and that is that the 13th Amendment, which was passed in 1865 as one of the 3 Reconstruction Amendments, it didn't abolish slavery. So one of the arguments that you will hear when you get ready to go to the ballot, or when you have the conversations, when you see or not see in the newspaper what's happening with PR2 for those who are streaming on Facebook. And for those who might watch this in the future, I'm Reverend Mark Hughes. I'm the executive director of Vermont Racial Justice Alliance. We are here at the Richard Kim Center, streaming live in Burlington, Vermont. We're talking about Proposal 2. It is a constitutional amendment that would seek to abolish slavery and indentured servitude in all forms, simply abolish it. And where we are is we're talking about the relationship that our Constitution has to the United States Constitution, because any state's relationship to the United States Constitution bears this resemblance, and that is that the United States Constitution says that for the punishment of a duly convicted crime, you are a slave, period. That is what the 13th Amendment says. About 88% of all Americans, 78% of all Americans do not understand this to be a fact by our statistical analysis at our statewide operations of Abolish Slavery National Network and the research that they've done. But it is true. Watch 13th. It is true. The 13th Amendment, no, it does not abolish slavery. So when somebody comes to you, encounters you, and says, hey guys, this whole PR2 thing is a joke because why would you even waste the time to abolish slavery in our Constitution when the 13th Amendment clearly does? Well, it doesn't. The 13th Amendment provides yet another exception clause for slavery, and that is, Max, I'm coming to you, get ready. That exception clause that the 13th Amendment provides is that for every state, at their discretion, they have the ability, they are required, if you will, to hold people at the statewide level as slaves, provided this is a categorization, this is a human rights, this is about human rights, this is about treatment, this is about employment, this is about how you feed people, this is about how you clothe people, this has everything to do with what we know and understand about convict leasing, and yes, indeed, the criminal justice system as it would evolve into what we affectionately refer to as the war on drugs. So there's a lot to unpack here, but our constitutional amendment in the state of Vermont would indeed negate this, because as you can see, it says slavery or indentured servitude in any form are prohibited. So just like how Vermont has chosen to push back against the feds on immigration with our fair and impartial policing policy, just like we've chosen to push back on them with our statutes and codes, as well as PR5 on the woman's right to reproduction, just like we pushed back against the feds on, despite the fact that it is a Schedule I drug that we have decriminalized, legalized, and now are taxing and regulating cannabis. Yes, we can also push back on this thing called slavery to the federal government. Max, can you tell us a little bit more about what how this thing comes together, this whole 13th Amendment plays into this conversation. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. There you go. Yes, I'm here. What I wanted to point out that immediately after the exception clause was inserted in the 13th Amendment, much of the country moved towards convict leasing. Texas began theirs only months after General Granger ended up in Galveston, Texas, to declare that all the slaves had been freed. Just a few months later, they began convict leasing. Convict leasing allowed slavery to go from the hands of the individual, which now became illegal, to the state taking control of it. And what they would need to do, and did do, was to criminalize basically those who had been formerly enslaved, using things like black codes and pig laws and Jim Crow laws that would immediately give them the opportunity to go out and arrest them in mass and then put them to work in caves and mines, railroads, on plantations where they had been at before as slaves, sugar fields and so on, for free. And they would work them to death. And there's a book by Matthew J. Mancini, called One Dies, Get Another, Convict Leasing in the American South, 1865 to 1928. And he says that the only difference between convict leasing and slavery is that with convicts so plentiful, they were seen as disposable. And this is how people were treated during that period. They said this period in American history was worse than slavery. That's what many historians say, because there was no care for the safety, well-being of those people. They would just literally work them to get to death. And then with the change towards mass incarceration, the United States started adopting warehousing bodies as the new way to generate wealth. An example would be what's happening right now in Rikers Island. Rikers Island is a jail. It's not a prison. And yet it costs almost $600,000 a year to incarcerate people in pretrial jail, which is known as a hell on earth, Rikers Island. So Khalif Browder would be the example of that, the 16-year-old boy who was accused of stealing a backpack and then ended up 3 years in this adult prison, one of the worst on the planet, called Rikers Island, 2 of which he spent in solitary confinement. And he never got a trial, which is a Sixth Amendment violation. But this happens all day, every day. And to imagine that we're spending as much as $600,000 per person to incarcerate them for a single year over a $20 violation is beyond reason. But this model of incarceration for profit that we've developed in the United States has become a global phenomenon, with 2 of the largest privately owned companies on the entire planet being prison companies. That would be Geo Group and G4S. G4S, a prison company, employs the most people on the entire continent of Africa as a private industry, with, I believe it's over 100 and some odd thousand employees across the entire continent of Africa. So the rest of the world has adopted what you began here in Vermont in 1777. Another example would be Alabama. Alabama adopted your exception clause before the 13th Amendment. And in 1860, about 90% of Alabama's GDP came from slavery. By 1890, 70% of their GDP came from convict leasing. So they took very little loss and kept the same system going on. And here we are today with the largest prison population that's ever existed on Earth. One that is so racially biased that we have more Black men behind bars in the United States than the top 5 populated African nations do combined.
Woo!
We're not a Black nation.
Good Lord. I sure do appreciate you, Max. I am seeing my wife in the waiting room, so I know my priorities. Hold on for a minute. That's what you call a smart brother right there. Hey, I wanna let you know, cue something up for us, Max, because we're gonna do one more little segment. We're gonna get out of here. I'm gonna after I dip out of here, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about just this whole downstream thing, because we talked about upstream, and there's we're talking about the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which requires 38 states to ratify a change to, and all that stuff that goes into that. I just want you to know that we are working at that angle, but there's more to work on. Some of that involves, the work that we're doing on this. There's Senator Merkley of Oregon and also Williams. They propose a constitutional amendment to close the slavery loophole in the 13th Amendment. So I just, on Friday, June 18th, right before Juneteenth, what they did is Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley and Congresswoman Nikema Williams, that's Georgia's 5th, they introduced the Abolish Slavery Amendment, which would strike the slavery clause of the 13th Amendment that allows slavery to continue in the United States. So there's more on that. We'll be getting more updates from our Abolish Slavery National Network national partners, as well as we'll be getting some updates from a lot of our folks who are doing this state operations, which Max is on, so we can update you on state by state by state what states are doing things similar to PR2. As we move on, just wanted to just make you aware of the fact, and what we'll do after this is we'll come back. We got something hot for you, Max. We'll bring a little bit more, but I just want to update you on systemic racism, talk about downstream, what's going on here in Vermont, just to let you know. Yes, the racial disparities in the criminal and juvenile justice system advisory panel, the all of that stuff that went into the Attorney General's and the Human Rights Commission's task force that came out of that, and the Racial Equity Executive Director, even HR 25, the resolution that urged the 2019 Senate to begin this work on PR2, that led into some of the work that you see now on PR2, the health equity policy. There's so many things that we're doing to systematically deconstruct these systems that are simultaneously and I think consistently delivering disparate adverse outcomes to Black and brown and otherwise underserved folks in our communities. So all of this stuff kind of ties in together, even the work that we're doing in Burlington. And in fact, with R113, this is a joint legislative resolution that we were able to pass this last year that where the legislators, they commit to the sustained and deep work of eradicating systemic racism through the state and actively fighting racist practices and participating in the creation of a more just and equitable systems. They also committed to coordinated the work and participating in ongoing action grounded in science and data to eliminate race-based health disparities and eradicate systemic racism. So just as last year we were able to get past Act 33, which is that health equity policy too. So a lot of work that we're doing on policies across the state. Policy is not the silver bullet. It is one of many things that we have to do in order to advance this fight, this work that we're doing. So Max, come on. We'll come back with what we have where you can do some things. We'll tell you a couple of things you can do. We'll go back to Max. Thanks.
Abolition. Today.
The labor system that took shape in the late 19th century developed coercive means to ensure that cotton remained king. It was called convict leasing. Get arrested on a minor charge or a trumped-up charge, you could find yourself locked up and then hired out to a corporation bidding on inmate labor. The pipeline from prisons to profits in this country has deep roots.
The aftermath of slavery was in some ways worse than slavery itself. Unlike before, when someone who owned you, driving you too hard was counterproductive because you would lose your investment. Convict leasing was different. You could get them cheaper, and if you actually drove them to death, there was more where that came from.
In the 13th Amendment, which ends the institution of slavery, of course, there is a loophole. Convicts who have been convicted of a crime, they actually can be forced to work for free.
In Alabama in 1850, 99% of the people who were incarcerated were white. In Alabama, by the 1880s, 85% of the people incarcerated were black. So we could have a debate about how many of those black people were actually innocent, or we could have a conversation about the use of the criminal justice system to target both the innocent and the guilty alike. That continues all the way to the present, where even today, about just under 40% of the nation's prisoners are black, and yet the African American population's about 13%. They are snatching up bodies everywhere to fuel this system.
The idea in which more money can be made out of their incarceration is still very much part of our criminal justice system.
I think if one of the things with the 13th Amendment, as with any other provision, it needs the people to step forward and embrace it. And right now we have a very explosive social movement, powerful social movement that's resonating across the country, the Black Lives Matter movement. I think the 13th Amendment is an ideal vehicle for that. People don't tend to think of it because of the victory of the enemies of the 13th Amendment in limiting it to its historical purpose of eliminating chattel slavery. But it's sitting there waiting to be grabbed.
Mr. Medford, you want to add anything before you?
I agree. I think that there are so many opportunities that amendment does, but it opens many doors. I think what has happened in the past is that because our Supreme Court changes from generation to generation, we go back to square one. And I think that perhaps if there was some other mechanism to make these changes, it would be great, but it seems that that is the only way, because we're talking about a constitutional amendment. But yes, it does become problematic.
Well, I would tell the gentleman to read Abraham Lincoln, who's also cited in my book. And Abraham Lincoln praises the framers of the Constitution, many of whom were slave owners, and he knew it. And he said, because they could not resolve this issue there and then, they left it to their progeny to do it. And that's what the Declaration of Independence does, as I've explained in my books too, as Abraham Lincoln explained over and over and over again. The same men who wrote and adopted the Declaration of Independence, which talks about the natural rights, the unalienable rights of the individual, not just white men, not just men, not just white, but every human being, set the stage for at some point the abolition of slavery. This is Lincoln's position, it's my position, it's really the only rational position there is.
Yeah, the only rational position that there is that. That's for sure. Got a couple slides for you. We're gonna get you out of here. Definitely taking a close look here at what we're doing. One of the things that we're looking at is some of the states that are that are kicking this thing around. One of them is Oregon. You got Alabama, Tennessee, California. So you got multiple states that are doing a lot of the work in abolishing slavery on the ballot in 2022. Again, this is important because what we're talking about is they're doing the same thing that we're doing with PR2. So again, Oregon, and we're talking about full swing campaigns. This is a thing. Just so you know, if you're listening, we're closing out a segment on Abolish Slavery Vermont here this afternoon, this evening here at the Richard Kim Center live in Burlington. And we're just talking about the importance of abolishing slavery once and for all, for the first time as a nation, because there has never been a point in our national history when slavery was not somehow or another institutionalized de facto, whether it has been institutionalized de jure or whether it has not been institutionalized constitutionally, whether it was chattel slavery or whether it is here state slavery. By the time the ink dried in 1865 on the 13th Amendment, there had been no change in terms of slave to ballot. We got a campaign. We're going to tell you a little bit more about what that looks like. But you see Tennessee and Alabama, California, Ohio, Florida, Vermont. I don't even think that slavery is permitted in a state anywhere up or down this eastern seaboard. If you let me tell it, this is a map that we created back in 2019. Is not exactly completely accurate because I think, help me, Max, Colorado and maybe Utah have already moved on this. Was it Colorado and Nebraska?
We have already abolished slavery in 4 states now. Rhode Island, Colorado, Utah, and Nebraska.
Okay, and the thing here, when we say abolish slavery, you don't need the language that permits slavery through an exception clause to have a need to place in your Constitution the abolishment of slavery, because don't forget about the 13th Amendment. So that's why, and I think Rhode Island made some moves like back in the day, though, didn't they, Max? Like, was it 1850s or something?
Yes, they were the only state into the Union that abolished slavery with no caveats whatsoever. The only state. We did not see that again happen until Colorado in 2018, when they finally removed their exception clause.
So yeah, I looked at this map back a few years ago when we first started working on this, and what took me by surprise was I'm looking from Maine to Florida, and there ain't nobody up and down the East Coast that's saying anything about slavery. Now, this really is about whether or not the Constitution says that slavery is permitted in any form. This may not be 100% accurate because I did it. But you got, for punishment of a crime, you got unconditional, and you also have debts and damages. No matter, anyway, just look at this. It's just Vermont on the East Coast. It's just Vermont. So I thought that was kind of strange. It blew me away.
Well, you got Jersey now too.
Well, what I'm talking about here is what was, again, like I said, it may not be accurate because I did it. But what I'm talking about is in the state constitution that language currently exists. Oh, by the way, I'm from Iowa, so it's also in our Constitution. But that's why we chose this. Is what we were doing. We were trying to illustrate which state constitutions currently have language allowing slavery in any form. Are you saying that New Jersey does have language in their Constitution allowing slavery?
No, I wasn't saying
Okay.
that at all. There are 25 states, 1 territory, and 1 district that has slavery exception clauses. Vermont, of course, is one of those. Right. But you also have places like Nevada that has theirs. Minnesota has one. Michigan has one. Maryland, Kentucky, Iowa, Indiana, Georgia, California, of course, they're on the list. Arkansas.
Yeah, this pretty much sums. I think this pretty much sums most of that up. I don't know if it's 100% correct, but if you start overlaying this with, say, like states that expanded Medicaid, or states that are pursuing laws on voter suppression, or states that say are really pushing women's reproductive right opposition, and the list goes on and on, you will begin to get a sense of what it is. This is not a perfect overlay. Or else if you just look at the map on election night and you see which color is which, whether it's blue or whether it's red, don't get me started. But there's a pretty good overlap of some of that stuff. And because really what we're talking about is this does tie directly into the state's willingness to profit from prison labor and labor associated with that. Okay, so there's a whole nother conversation we'll have, and it's much more robust than that. I want to just take a couple minutes talk about what the United Nations is saying about systemic racism. Again, that's what we talked about when we started. That's what we're talking about when we're closing. So we'll let you just scan over that. We'll have this slide next time when we come in. Basically, we're taking a look at this thing from a lot of different lenses, and one of them is also not just the United States, but the United Nations, because we know that the United Nations is still calling the United States out for chattel slavery, for things that happened on the Middle Passage, and calling them a crime against humanity. We know that, our idea of human rights, our idea of so-called civil rights in the United States is just an English colonial construct, and in many ways has nothing to do with human rights that are being articulated in the United Nations. So definitely wanted to take some time, and I'm going to just get you to the end. Vermont Interfaith Action, you saw our partners on earlier. We're closing now. Max, you can take us out with I don't know. You got that Harriet Tubman song that from that movie.
I got it set up.
You do? Okay, nice. Okay, Vermont Interfaith Action is partnering closely with us, so we're all doing the work. You can expect, here moving out through May, we're going to be partnering with folks in the community. So if you're linking up with us right now, if you're seeing this, if you're hearing this, if you're watching this, and let's just say, you watch this on our Facebook page later and you say, hey, it's April, then you should know that we are in the process. When we start doing these things, we're going to start setting up tables for folks to come in and help us to write op-eds in different publications, to help draft flyers and do the work, to help us distribute these door-to-door materials, and also voter registration. So we're going to be doing all of those things. We're going to be moving into a new season coming into the summer when we start moving towards Juneteenth, and we start moving into July. Of course, don't forget about the First African Landing Day. We've got that going to be happening this year as well. So there's a lot of stuff. We're going to be doing some social media stuff, a lot of stuff. We're inviting you in. We're calling you in. If you believe that here in Vermont that slavery should be abolished, that indentured servitude can be abolished, there is a place for you here. So thank you all for coming out tonight. Thanks for joining us. Mark Hughes, Reverend Mark Hughes, the Vermont Racial Justice Alliance here at the Richard Kim Center in Burlington, Vermont. We're going to be coming back next week at the same time, same place. We'll see you then.
I've been walking with my face turned to the sun. Weight on my shoulders,